Hello, I'm Nick Ferrier. I'm a guy who works at HSBC in the investment bank. Not normally known for being leading edge on the front end. So I'm going to talk to you about our journey, and maybe it won't be about JS at the start, right? So about 3 or 4 years ago, we started building a single dealer application, very late to the market, and we started building it as a web app. And we were kind of failing, so we decided to change our approach, and we decided that the right answer was to deliver a lot, right? To just almost fake it till you make it, they say, right? So in that first year, we did 700 releases to production, and the following year, we did 5,000 releases to production, and the year after that, we did 10,000 releases to production. And this year, we've done 12,000, 14,000, something like that. I don't know what the number is. We've started to not count how many releases we do to production because it's getting a bit boring. But we are getting quite good at that mechanistic thing of actually getting code out the door. And it's not just about getting code out the door, it's getting people to specify code that you could get out of the door, right? Getting the business to agree to that. And we've had to build a whole load of cloud-like technologies and all sorts of things to make that work, and it's kind of funny when you go to Google Next and they say, oh, we've got this, and you think, oh, yeah, we've got that. And they say, oh, we've got this, and you think, yeah, we've got that. And it's not because we bought it from them, right? We made it all ourselves with our bare hands. So it's kind of weird because it's not really a technological thing. It's a big cultural transformation. In fact, I'm sure that you've all been to some conference and heard it's a big cultural transformation. And that's almost a trite thing now. It's like, we can produce a project plan for the cultural transformation. In the first year, we're going to be 25% more cultural. How much more cultural? 25% more cultural. Really? 25% more cultural? That's amazing. And just in the first year. So that's, that sort of stuff does go on. What I think I personally realized is that when I was young, I was kind of fire and brimstone, smash things, bring down the state, Thatcher, all of that. And as I've got older, I've kind of realized that revolutions, they nearly always end in a bloodbath or failure of some kind, and it's much better to be incremental. So the right approach to cultural transformation is not necessarily to produce a project plan of 25% more cultural, but to try and work on a little bit here, a little bit there, and there are lots of things that have to change. So our approach is to just fix things, where we try and find things that are broken and just fix them. So one of those things is the relationship with the business. If you can't deliver anything, you have to fix that first. Another thing is your people. So one of the things I feel like we've fixed, and trust me, I'm getting to the JS bit, right? One of the things I feel like we've fixed is the ability of our people to help out. So in a big bank, you have lots and lots and lots of people. Not all of them are able to write code. Not all of them are programmers, right? We have some really great programmers, but we have lots of other people too. So one of the things that I think we fixed was helping those people, or many of them, help us do stuff. So our OPSI people really took to Clojure, for example. That seems weird, right? But they didn't want to write Java because that's too much like being a programmer. But writing Clojure, you could pretend that was just bash. So that's quite cool, right? Now, how does JavaScript get into this? Well, JavaScript to us is the next step of that transformation. We can get JavaScript to a whole bunch of other people who'd never touched it before. So when we started, obviously we're building this thing on the web, right? So we're building it with Angular or React, and you can argue about which one of those you're going to use until home time. And it's really easy to do that. But that's kind of a programmery thing. What we realized was that actually you could spend quite a lot of time not using those tools. You didn't have to go and use those tools, right? Because browsers now are amazing. They're like the most advanced thing that humankind has ever produced. Like, you think about the journey that the browser was on from that kind of crappy HTML thing that we used to have, and it could barely do, flashing colors and stuff like that, to what we have now, that anything is possible in this thing. It could fool you that you were talking to a person that it had just faked. And it could do the speech, and it could listen to you and interpret what you were saying. All just the browser could do that. It doesn't need any additional frameworks to make those things happen. And that means that people can just sit down and play with it, and they can start learning things. So when we realized this, we started to change tack a little bit. And one of the things that we did was to start building server-side code in JavaScript because it gets more people involved in building JavaScript things. But we also built a tool we call EBA, Evolve Base Assets. So our single dealer platform is called Evolve. I probably should have mentioned that right at the start. I'm not a very good salesman. Hey, that's why I'm wearing a hoodie. Anyway, so we built this tool that anyone could go and play around with our user experience. So we have our business people now mucking about in this thing, making user experiences. Now, maybe that's a double-edged sword. Maybe sometimes they're going to make something that looks like the cat was sick on it. But it's still a really good thing to get them involved. It creates a conversation, and it means that you can do things really, really quickly and iterate, right? So even if they do make a mess, that's OK, because they make a mess in a way that we can deliver and go faster and make more things. So that's kind of our journey. I wanted to reflect on maybe why JavaScript had got to that point. One of the things Niall and I were talking about before is there's kind of been all of these, there was Flash. And I remember working at a place where the Flash devs said, oh, no, Flash will never disappear. No, 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 no. And why is that? And I believe that that's an intrinsic part of our approach, the answer to why. So if you look at JavaScript, one of the reasons it's been successful on the server side, on the front end, is because it's a fairly modern language. That feels like a strange thing to say because it's actually as old as browsers, which are quite old now. And before that, it was based on a very old language scheme. So there's nothing really computer sciencey new in JavaScript, right? It's not like a revelation or anything. It's just bog standard. But the tooling around it is fairly new. So we've got NPM coming on to talk later. NPM's amazing, right? Of all of those tools, like you go and compare it to pip and Maven and all of those things, and it's just by far the best. Probably just because it's the latest and they learned all of the really crappy things not to do. It's also really, really, really good if you're in a financial institution in a way that maybe languages like Go haven't learned yet. So there's that, right? But again, how does that relate to that thing of going back to things like Flash and all of those Java things that we tried before? Why is this better? And I think that the answer is, and this is the summation of my talk, and I really want you to take this away. The answer is that we're here talking about maybe enterprise JavaScript, and is that really a thing? Is that really a thing? I think enterprises are beginning to learn maybe that there is a world outside, right? That we talk about the things that are important to enterprise, scale and resilience, but there's one thing that's really scalable and really resilient, and that's the web. Right? So enterprises can buy other solutions all they like. What they ought to do is look at the web, because that's what works. And I feel like that's the success. And what we're doing now is celebrating that success and adopting the things that people have really worked hard on for years and years and years and years and years and made work on the web. And that scale is amazing. And here we are adopting it and making it work. So I hope you've enjoyed my talk. Thank you very much.